Broncos lose again by 1 point. Oh God, I don't like this trend at all. In the last game, I talked about how I felt like I was just whelmed and there's a lot of issues. There were still some issues in this game, don't get me wrong, but I do feel like this was a step in the right direction. My biggest takeaway from this game was the fact that Russell Wilson looked much more comfortable moving in and out of the pocket. Passing wise was still a little bit up in the air, let's say, or not up in the air, depending on how you want that joke to be. Either way, Russell Wilson looked more comfortable. They got him rolling, got him moving. He looked a little bit more like vintage Russ, which I like. Passing game wasn't there, like I mentioned. He only went 3 for 6, 24 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. He did lead a field goal drive that was, I believe it was 12, 13 play long field goal drive, capped off by a Brett Maher field goal. Yes, indeed, he did actually kick a field goal. I know, didn't think that could happen. Biggest storyline, of course, though, is Javonte Williams is back on the field. Thank goodness. And this was our first look at him in live action since his injury last season. And he was fine. He had 3 attempts for 12 yards. He did catch a pass, a little flip that Russell Wilson threw over there and, you know, almost got picked off by Fred Warner, but it didn't, so it's a highlight. I guess it's going to be a highlight either way. It just depends on what team you're showing the highlight for. Williams, honestly, he did look a little bit slower than he had last season, but it's his first game back. It was very, very limited action, so I'm not really going to judge him too harshly. Biggest thing for him, he got on the field. He didn't get hurt. Step in the right direction. I like it. Samaje Perine, though, he did look pretty explosive, averaging 7.3 yards per carry on his 3 attempts. I do like what I've seen from him in the preseason so far. And Samaje and Williams, I think that was a great pickup for the Broncos, for Samaje to be able to take most of that carries early as Williams works his way back into the roster. The receivers were fine. No one really jumped off the page from the receiver room, and it's a little bit concerning, especially since we don't really know who the number 3 is on this team. You'd hope it would be Marvin Mims Jr., but no one has particularly stepped up. In fact, the leading receiver reception-wise was Javonte Williams with 4. No one else eclipsed 3. Nate Atkins and Lil Jordan Humphrey had 3 as well, and Jalen Virgil had a 50-yard catch. Besides that, really quiet. Kendall Hinton had a really bad day. He had 2 drops. Alberto absent again. Marquez Callaway didn't show up. So, you know, kind of wondering, who's that 3rd receiver going to be? They did not do a good job creating lanes for Wilson. Offensive line did not allow a sack on Wilson, which is an improvement. They still didn't look great. Bowles looked a little less abysmal. Overall, though, I'm still very concerned. I didn't have anything that really pushed me one way or the other. Mike McGlinchey, hopefully when he comes back, he will be able to elevate this offensive line. Overall, though, I just think kind of stay pat at where you're worried or not worried about the offensive line. Defensively, a couple things interesting to note. Randy Gregory stayed out almost the entire game, which I like. I would like to see a full season of him playing for this team. Obviously, when he has had extended playing time on the field, he's usually done good. It's been injuries that kept him down. A couple other guys who showed up in the game, Alex Singleton looked good. Vance Joseph's been sending him on a lot of blitzes, and I really like it. I liked him on the blitzes up the middle. It's been cool. Another guy, Elijah Garcia, continuing to make an impact. He was getting double teamed a lot of his time on the field, but he did still manage to lay a QB hit and have a pass deflection. He also had the highlight of the game where he picked off Trey Lance. It's pretty cool. Love to see the big man interceptions. Now talking about the backup, some of the guys who aren't in the spotlight for this team. I do want to start off with the quarterback room. I'm going to go over Jared Stidham's play. He had the most time under center of the Broncos quarterback, 17 attempts from him, 12 completions, 130 yards, no picks, no interceptions, 2 sacks. Stidham was better than he was against the Cardinals. I told you that he was abysmal against the Cardinals. He was. He was much improved in this game. Overall, Stidham had a decent game. He wasn't wowing me by any stretch of the imagination, but he did have some good pre-snap reads, some good pre-snap adjustments. I liked what I saw from him. Definitely a step in the right direction. Ben DiNucci kind of took a step back. Honestly, didn't really see that much of him. He was 3 for 7, 13 yards and a touchdown, but most of his time on the field was overshadowed by a single man. Jaleel McLaughlin, 7 carries, 45 yards and a touchdown, 6.5 average. Jaleel McLaughlin has looked really good in this preseason, and he might be playing his way into that 3rd or 4th running back spot. At the very least, I think they're going to bring him back to the practice squad. I'd be absolutely shocked if he wasn't on the practice squad or on the team come season. I plan to make a video going into my predictions for the roster cuts, probably this week, maybe next week, we'll see. Getting to Jaleel McLaughlin, I do like what I've seen from him. And on that final drive, when they went down the field, scored a touchdown to take the lead that would inevitably get ripped out of their hands, Jaleel McLaughlin was fantastic in the air and on the ground. Defensively, Drew Sanders had a good game. 7 tackles for him. He had a pass defense as well. He was good. He was exactly what you wanted to see out of Drew Sanders. Jonathan Cooper, another guy who showed up in this game. And the name I think we're going to be hearing a lot of, Essang Bassey, another pick. 2 picks so far in this preseason. He's been solid, and I think he's playing his way onto the roster for sure. And so happy to see that from him. We need to see guys stepping up behind Mathis and Patrick Surtain. Maher was 2 for 2 with a long of 48 in this game, so just phew. I mean, that's a breath of fresh air to see him hit kicks. But now let's talk about the defense, specifically the backup defense. Another late game lead that we lose by 1 point. I don't like it. Now, it is just the 3rd stringers. I'm not going to overreact. Preseason, it's preseason. Just can't take too much from it. But I will say, I don't like how much they've been run over in the 4th quarter, and both against the Cardinals and the 49ers, just the backups, but I'd still like to see a little bit more fight out of them. They're going to wrap up preseason against the Rams in Denver, and I know a lot of you might not be watching the 3rd game of preseason, but if you do, here's a few names you might watch out for and why you should watch out for them. At running back, 2 names, and it's interesting. It's the 2 names listed 3rd and 4th on the depth chart. It's Tyler Batty and Tony Jones Jr. at running back. And the reason I have these guys on here is because of Jaleel McLaughlin. He is coming for their jobs. It's their specific jobs that he would be taking if he makes this roster. One of those 2 guys will not be on this roster if McLaughlin makes it. So Tony Jones Jr. and Tyler Batty need to have a good game. Tony Jones had good flashes when he was in there, but he wasn't as good as McLaughlin. He did have a long run where he got dragged down late in the game. Show up, you gotta make an impact. And at receiver, I'm just gonna say everyone. Everyone who's not Jerry Jeudy or Courtland Sutton needs to step up. Someone needs to come out and take that number 3 receiver job, and this is your final chance. Kendall Hinton and Montrell Washington. Kendall Hinton, obviously the emergency quarterback from a couple of seasons ago. Montrell Washington here for returns. Those 2 guys need to make the case of why they have to be on this roster. So far they haven't, and so far there seem to be easy cuts to make for this team. And finally, not really that big of a surprise, is Brett Maher. Peyton has already said he is competing against anyone the Broncos could pick up after cut day. Just because they have another kicker on the roster doesn't mean that he is not on thin ice. And so he needs to show something in the game. Have another game like he did against the 49ers, and maybe he'll be our kicker this season. I hope that he is, if he makes kicks. But that's it for preseason week 2. Like if you liked, and subscribe, share to everyone so that they can watch me talk about the Broncos. Oh boy, I've been trying to hold myself back because it's not the regular season yet, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter, Liam. It's just preseason. It's not counting. But oh boy, when I get into the regular season and they lose a game by 1 point like this, I am going to flip my lid.